I am truly amazed at what we accomplished in just one day and a couple of minutes with my horses.
We took this horse from almost the point where I was ready to put him down for fear that he'd hurt someone to a horse that's really become very functional.
Kevin Wescott is the best thing that ever happened to my horse.
More importantly, he's really helped me think and think about what I'm doing and have a reason for what I ask my horse to do.
He is the most fantastic trainer I have ever worked with.
This is a 3-year-old gelding. It's been raised on a ranch and had a halter on 4 times before the last couple days here when we started messing with him. And you can see that it's real windy there today. And so we're gonna hold this horse with another horse and make it a little easier for Tyson to handle the blanket and the saddle. And as you watch this horse, you can see that he's not really ready to saddle here. There's some things we could do to get him ready, but because of time with the camera and what we want to show, we're just going to go ahead and try to put a saddle on him. And you got to remember, when you do things like this, you can cause yourself a few problems, and we see that happening right here. But also at the same time, this colt, you can see him, and he can kind of learn where the end of that lead rope is, and he kind of thinks he can set back and pull against that. And one of the important things is waiting on a horse, and you'll see some of that here as we dally up to the saddle horn, and then we just wait. We don't try to do anything with it, and then we just kind of let him work at that feel on the end. And you can see the wind again there. But one of the things about doing it like this is, if you create a few of these problems, you have to be aware of them, and then you can fix them later. And one of the things with horses, I think, is that you need to be aware of things, but you don't necessarily need to fix them. And I think if you try to always be fixing everything you see, pretty soon you're kind of picking at your horse, and you're always adjusting him, and he doesn't get a chance to learn things on his own. And I think that you find out sometimes if you ignore things with a horse, they may be gone in a ride or two, and you didn't even fix them. They just disappeared on their own. So what we're going to do here is get the saddle on this colt, and then we're going to turn him loose in here. But you can also see the support he gets from that other horse. So even though that was kind of scary a little bit for him at the first, he's getting a lot of support from standing next to that other horse. And we may see the wild stuff, and we may see some of the things that go on with the horse kind of struggling with it, and then we may not see just how much support that horse learns to get. And that's what we're after here, is to support that horse. And the support doesn't necessarily mean petting and rubbing on him either. The support means that he just liked to stand there by that horse. We're kind of getting our horses ready. We'll have a horse on each end of the arena here, and then Tyson will turn this horse loose, and we're just going to let him kind of go around this ring and try out this saddle. Now you're going to see some times in here where the filming probably should be cut, but we're not going to cut it because we want to show kind of the whole thing. There is one place where we will cut the film, and that's where we had to change and try to get a shorter girth because we weren't getting the saddle quite tight enough when we get ready to ride him. And you notice at the first here with our horses, we're not doing too much with him. We're just kind of trying to keep him out of trouble too much. We don't want him maybe getting down to the fence. And you'll see a time or two here, he kind of takes off and goes that hard anyway, so we just kind of let him go. But in a little bit here, we'll be able to kind of control him and hold him a little more. But at the first here, just going to let him kind of get some of this out of him and let him work at it a little bit. And you can see we got kind of an unsafe place down there in the roping box. So in a little bit here, there's a couple guys going to walk down there and watch that spot. And that's what you want to give your horse, an opportunity to try that out there before you get on him, because they can learn a lot on their own. Tom Dorrance told me one time that when he had too many horses to ride, that some of them he'd just saddle and turn them out in a pen for 3 or 4 hours during the day. And he thought that at the end of a month that those horses rode just as good as the ones that he'd rode every day. So there can be a lot of benefits to just having the horse learn things on his own. Sometimes we get the idea that we need to teach the horse things, but I think there is a lot of things that they can learn on their own to get them ready to ride. And you see this horse still using the whole ring, and pretty quick here we're going to start kind of controlling that, and we're not making him run there. You can see that he gets going and then he takes off, and he doesn't know how to shut it down, so he's working himself. We just keep him from end to end and send him back, and he's going to start liking the middle more. And he's going to learn that running hard on his own is kind of hard work. And he's going to start learning to save himself and take care of himself. And he's going to learn when he gets scared to go ahead and slow back down on his own. Now, one of the things about the tapes that I'm doing is I'm not trying to teach my method. I'm trying to teach an understanding of the horse and how he operates. And what we're trying to accomplish with this film here is just what can happen with the horse in this situation. And we do start quite a few of them like this, especially because I have daughters, and daughters bring home boys. They seem to kind of show up. And so when you get one of these boys like Tyson that hangs around, and you got to get them started before they get married, then you can put them on these horses and let them go, and they'll do just about anything for you. And you can see Adrian's horse, he needs sharpened up a little bit too there, because he didn't stop and turn around. So a little bit of extra work for him, and you'll see him a little bit later. He'll start to get on the ball a little more and get ready, because he doesn't want to run hard. And he'll find out that the easier way out is to turn around with this little horse. And you can see the horse wasn't quite ready to catch there. And he's never been caught out of a small pen before. And he doesn't know that he can be caught out in an arena like this. So he'll get to work just a little bit more, but it's open for him to go up by Tyson. And you'll see him there. He goes away from Tyson. But that time he's a little more ready, and the first time he wasn't ready. So a lot of times there's no use catching your horse if he's not ready. And if you have help with somebody on another horse, or on foot, they can just bring that horse back to you, and the next time he comes back, he might be ready. Now in just a little bit here, we're going to go ahead and cut this and get a shorter cinch. Now we have a little bit shorter cinch on him. We're just going to let him get used to that just a little bit, move around a little bit before we see if we can put a rider up on his back. And going back to when Tyson caught him out there the first time, you see that he never forced himself on the colt. And the colt actually thought there about coming and taking a look at him. But it's very important not to force yourself on these horses and try too hard to catch them, or try too hard to work them in a round pen, or try too hard to get them to face you. Working in a round pen is fine, and it's a good idea to learn that. But if you're not careful in that round pen, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. And you see Adrian's horse that time was a lot more ready to come around, because he found out it's a lot easier if he just comes around and turns this little horse instead of going slow in his turn and then having to go the whole width of the arena to turn the colt. And it's open here the whole time for this colt to come back and see Tyson. We're not in a huge hurry for it, but it's open if he wants to come see Tyson. But you can see he's got some other things he kind of wanted to try out first, and that's where the time frame comes in, that it's his time and not our time, and we let him try those other things out. And we'd like him to try them out, but not to the point where he gets too tired or where he would get hurt. So we don't want to wear him out as he's trying out those things, and we want to try to keep him controlled enough that he doesn't get in a situation where he can get hurt. Now this is the first time that Tyson's ever seen this horse. So you can see a little bit of petting there can start to build a little bit of a friendship there and a little understanding, and the horse can start to get more comfortable, and you see him chewing his mouth there. And Tyson pets the horse and then backs out and then comes in, and Adrian's going to move the horse up to him a little bit there. But you can still see that in-between spot. The horse is pretty good when Tyson is close to him, and he's pretty good when Tyson is back a ways. But in between, and that time he was much better when he got in that middle spot there. And Ray talked about that. I remember 20 years ago hearing Ray talk about the in-between spot, that the horse is fine when you're 10 or 20 feet away, and he's fine when you're right there next to his shoulder. But sometimes that spot right in there, they become uncomfortable, and you see the colt get more comfortable that time because he reached down and smelled and then brought his head up, and Tyson was in that little area there. So you can practice this area this way, or you could have a halter and a lead rope on your horse. And if you have a horse that's just a little bit difficult to catch, practice that in between area and go out there to the end of your lead rope and then come back. And you see he stayed around there quite a while. Now he's got to go somewhere. He got ready to do something else. He was pretty comfortable around Tyson, but then he had to go try something else out. And there he came, started to come right towards him. But he's got some other things on his mind. He's wondering if he can get back to his pens where he lives, because this is where the colt has been living the last week or two since Justin brought him up. And you see the step away there, and eventually we want that little step away to go away with this horse. We'd rather not have that, but that's okay. A lot of these things don't matter at all, but what matters is that you're aware of them. And when I say they don't matter at all, I mean, you can still ride the horse without a lot of those things. But at some point in time, it's nice to come back and pick those things up. And we're just going to do a little preparation before Tyson gets on. You saw how when we saddled the horse, he didn't have a lot of understanding about somebody up above him, and when he got scared of the saddle, he pulled back. He's never been worked off another horse before. And in a little bit here, I'm going to put Tyson up on this horse, and I want him to have a little more trouble now than what he might have when Tyson is on him. And you can see the rein on my bridle here is starting to fall down there. And that doesn't look very good, and I didn't notice it then. Unfortunately, my horse didn't step through it, and the other horse didn't get in it. But we don't want to go too slow up here with this. We're not trying to just get up and pet him, because while we have just a little bit of fear in the colt, we can use that to get some lateral movement and get the horse to start to kind of bend and soften. And there we petted him, and you'll see as soon as we kind of start to pet on him, then that's going to slow down and we'll lose our movement. And when we lose our movement, then we're going to have to do something to get after him to get him to move. And that was nice and quiet there, so he stopped. So we let some of this, what looks like kind of wild stuff, go on just a little bit, because as I said before, we want to have this be just a little tougher than what it would be with somebody on his back. And as you notice, when I work towards him with my hand, I don't give him a lot of chance to handle that. Now, I don't reach over and hit him in the head just so he'll jump, but I don't do it real slow, because I want him to get used to fast movement around his head. Once again, so when Tyson gets on and he's moving his hands and stuff, the colt's had that experience. And you can see that time when I touched him, most of that fear is gone out of him, and I can reach right out and take a hold of him. But if I'd have tried to take that out of him before I did some other things, I would have had some problems getting him to move, because I'd have quieted him down before I accomplished some of these other things, which is touching him, bending him, and getting me right up above him. A lot of the things that a rider might do when they're on top of him. And now we're just kind of moving him around and letting him bend his neck a little bit. Now, we don't need to do this for 100 times this way and 100 times that way, but we just kind of do just a little bit to work on kind of that little bit of brace in his neck from the fear he has of us. Now he knows how to bend his neck, so we don't need to teach him to bend his neck, but we need to teach him that. It's nice of him there. He just kind of come through a little bit, and then he went the other direction. So we just kind of make it open for him to go that direction, and we just kind of keep riding around. And I don't think you want to look at it as a cue or direction in that way. You want to put your horse in just a little bind and then kind of wait for him to get out of it. And you can see as I kind of bend his neck, he's in a little bit of a bind. And then we let him wait, and we just kind of keep the neck bent and wait. And you can see he kind of jerked away there. A little bit of fear, and that doesn't matter that he kind of got away. He didn't get away with anything. And we're just waiting for him to come through in this direction, and there he went. And on the other direction he came through. And there he came through again. Now these are things that, once again, when Tyson gets on, this colt's going to need to learn how to move his feet. Now just a little bit more pulling on him here, and then we'll get ready for Tyson to get on him. And like I said before, to do this, it works really well if you have daughters. And they've been married in this video about 2 months, but I think you probably have to get them started before they're married, or they probably won't do this for you. And you can see how nice and quiet this colt is here, but this fear level is going to raise. And so I try to explain it, and I don't know if it's right or not, but you kind of raise the fear level, and then you kind of try to let it back down. So you see the colt kind of get scared, and he's still a little tight, but he's handling it. And then Tyson's going to step down in a little bit here and not get all the way on, because we want to do just enough of this on and off that this colt kind of learns not to be afraid of that when Tyson steps up there. And I think that the more times you get on and off before you actually ride him, the easier it is to get off after you're done riding. He was pretty good about it that time. And that's a lot for him to handle. Now he's never moved before with anybody on his back now, so that's going to be another thing that's a little difficult. And you see him start to almost get scared there, so I'm in no hurry to move him off. I asked him to move off. He didn't go the first 2 times. That's okay. He doesn't have to do what I ask. I try and see if he can handle it. If he acts like he can't handle it, sometimes we don't get in too big a hurry. And you see Tyson gets kind of busy with his hands because he knows that the horse is getting some support from that lead rope and some help, and that I can kind of help him out. And you see me keep the horse pretty confined here for a little bit because I don't want too much to happen. We get in trouble if things start happening and they get to going too big and too fast and too far, and then we're in trouble. So I keep a pretty close check on this horse at the first there. And that was our first transition from walk to trot. And you could see the colt got pretty worried about that. He could handle the walk pretty good, then he couldn't handle the trot very good, and that's much better the second transition. And these transitions are pretty important. There may be quite a few things that you can get by with on a young horse and go back and pick up later. But these transitions from walk to trot and trot to walk, if you don't get these halfway right at the start, you may have problems for a long time, because this colt needs the confidence that he can come back on his own. And you see him trot up there, and I didn't have to help him too much there, just a little bit of support. But at the first I had to help him a lot, or he was going to take off and leave. And there was just a little bit of a lope or canter. That was his first time at that. But what we're building into him here is that he can slow up on his own. And that's where these young horses really develop a confidence, is they can slow up on their own. They get in trouble, and then they slow up. And they may take a little run, or they may take a few jumps to buck, and then they say, oh, this isn't the thing I'm supposed to do, and they slow up. And if you notice, we don't do much here with whoa. We pretty much just, everything's forward. And that was pretty nice of him, other than I turned him because he got too far out there, but he would have came back on his own. And that's the first time I've asked my horse to trot. And then before I pulled on that horse, I tried to get my horse shut down, because the colt Tyson's on shut it down and went to a walk. Now that wasn't my idea. We were trotting along, and as soon as I seen him make that transition back to a walk, my plans didn't become important anymore. Now we're going to try to get him up to a trot here. But if you go back and watch that spot, that might be part of a pretty important part of this, is that you might have an idea in your head about what you're doing and trying to accomplish, and you see the colt kind of take off there, but you need to be ready to change your idea to fit what the horse did, even though it wasn't what you had planned for him. Tyson's pretty brave with his hand back there, and you could see that kind of bother the colt. And one of the things I try to teach people, if they put their hand back there, then bring it back to the front. And that time Tyson didn't need to, but the time before he did. That time the colt was fine. But a lot of times if you go to the back, then you bring your hand back to the front for support. So the horse gets a little scared of something from behind, and then you can get that hand back there in front to support him again. And at the first, you see I kept that lead rope around that saddle horn pretty much all the time. And now I've gotten to where I feel comfortable enough to lead him without it around the saddle horn. Now this here's the fun part. Like I said before, this isn't the only way to start a colt. by any means. And I wouldn't necessarily do it with every young horse. We do it with quite a few, just because we've had some of these younger guys around, and even some girls and my daughter a time or two, or my daughters a time or two, that kind of enjoy trying this out. And the one thing we've set up here the whole time is Tyson has never been the bad guy. He has always been the good guy. He's never, pulled on the horse. I did the pulling on the horse off my horse. He's never scared the horse with a flag. Adrian and I did the scaring with the flags off our horse. So I think it's possible to build just a little bit, especially in catching a horse, of a good guy, bad guy deal. And you see Tyson keeping his hands busy. He keeps his hands on that horse's neck and lets that horse know where he is all the time. You can get in a whole lot of trouble sometimes riding a young horse if you don't make contact with him. And that contact can be through the lead rope, the reins, or the hand on the shoulder. But that contact is really important to let that horse know that you're there. Because if you take that contact off a young horse for too long and then sometimes put it back on, they wonder where you came from. And they forget you were ever up there. And the one thing you have to do in doing something like this, and actually in riding a colt or a young horse in any situation, is you have to be relaxed. And if you notice Tyson, that's one thing he does really well. He just sets up there and relaxes. Now he tries to be ready, and you can see the colt make a few little jumps there. And as soon as the horse came out of the jumps, he's right back to being relaxed and going with him. And this is, you notice here that during the start we've kept the colt pretty much right in the middle, because we don't want him to get too far out there and get lost. And now that we've got him working a little bit, we'll let him go down the rail and go farther. There. Now that's a little thing that sister-in-laws do to brother-in-laws. You get a chance to do something like that, you don't want to miss those chances. And she took pretty good advantage of that to get that colt to move out there, and you could see it put a little smile on both of their faces. I'm going to let him stop a little bit here. If we go too much and go, you'll build a nervousness into these horses, because they're only comfortable if they move. So you watch for the times where you can start to build some quietness into the horses. And that was all his idea, to leave there. And you can see that it didn't matter to us if it was his idea or not. Tyson would have been happier if the horse would have just sat there, because he was going to let him take a break and pet on him a little bit. But the horse left, and Tyson didn't have any choice, so he left too. We're going to give him a rope here and let him start to mess around with this rope a little bit. Now the one reason we don't let him stand around a lot, especially at the start, and this is where you have to read your horses. A lot of these young horses, if you let them stand around too much, they can get to thinking too much, and then they can get worried. Now, like I said before, we don't want to move them to the point where we wear them out. And you see the colt lick there and chew? We don't want to move them to the point where we wear them out. but we kind of have to watch sometimes and keep him moving, and so we keep him aware of what's going on. He's doing a pretty good job of handling this. And you can see how relaxed Tyson is about it. And through all these little deals, when the colt would get scared and stuff, the rider didn't get scared, the rider didn't get worried, and it became no big deal. Now you see some stuff out there about people talking about getting the horse to respect you. And I'm not sure that respect goes very far. And I'm not sure you want to teach your horse to respect you. If you think of it in human terms, if the people you respect aren't the people that told you things to do, the people you respect are people that you watched what they did, and the people that said do this, do that, do this, I'm not sure that's people that you really respect. And I think horses are the same, and I think you should be about building confidence in your horse. And you can see the confidence this little horse is getting in Tyson, because he knows Tyson's not going to hurt him. I mean, Tyson's done nothing to hurt this horse. All he's did is sat on him and went with him. All Tyson has wanted here is just to go with this colt everywhere the colt went. And I think we should be more about building a confidence in our horses than trying to teach our horses to respect us. Another thing we'll talk about just a little bit here, I guess, is the idea of prey-predator. And I've asked some people about this that were in this from the very start, the Ray Hunt, Tom Dorrance ideas, and they would probably tell you, Ray and Tom would tell you, that they didn't start them either. But I think they did make a lot of these ideas out there for a lot of us. They did for me anyway. But where did the prey-predator idea come from? Because I don't see that in horses. And I don't think it's there because of the natural trust that horses have for people. And Tom talked about that one time when I was talking to him, or in his book, True Unity, which I would recommend that everybody read. And he also has a tape that I would recommend that you watch. But he talked about the natural trust that a horse has for a person. Now right there, Tyson could have done just a little bit better job of starting that colt off. He was just a little bit abrupt with the rope, and if he'd have did a series of little taps there, he might have got a little better transition. But you see how well that colt stood that, even though it might not have been quite correct. Now, not everybody wants a rope horse, but I think everybody does want a horse that they can move their hands off of. And for the rider, it can be really good to, like we talked before, to keep their hands busy. And this goes to some things we'll talk about on other tapes, which is ignoring your horse. So when Tyson has this rope here and has something to do and to play with and swing, he kind of ignores the horse. And you can see he's not ignoring him right here, which is fine. You don't always need to ignore your horse. He's kind of messing with the rope a little bit and petting him. But you saw a lot of times when they were going around and around the ring, Tyson just ignored the horse. And so once again, as we talked before, he wasn't picking at the horse. He wasn't asking the horse to do anything. They were just both going wherever they went. And Tyson was happy because he got to ride, and the horse was happy because he could move out and do things with his body, and horses like to move. Now, we're getting ready here, the preparation for Tyson to get off. And we're going to see if he can get off here without me holding the colt or us catching him up. Now this could be a pretty dangerous thing, as Tyson found out about 3 years ago when he went to get off one and didn't have his left foot all the way out of the stirrup. And when he went to step off, the colt started bucking, and hard. Now fortunately he's pretty athletic, and I wish we had it on film, because the horse made about 2 bucks with his foot stuck in the stirrup before he got completely a hold of the saddle, and he got back on the horse while he was bucking. And unfortunately we don't have that on video. So if you're going to do something like this here, make sure and get that left foot to where when you're part way off, that left foot will come all the way out, or take both feet out of the stirrups. Now that colt hung together for Tyson just about as well as you could. There he's chewing again. And you notice just the little deal that Tyson did. He got up and down 3 or 4 times when he got on. That can make all the difference for when it's time to get off. Adrian's just heading him back over to Tyson. And we could work on that if we wanted to now yet. We could spend some time working on getting the colt to go to Tyson. Or we could quit here. But we know from before that he needs, that's nice of him, that he needs just a little bit of help of being caught. So if you have the time, you can work on the idea of him being caught. The purpose of the tapes that I make, I don't want them to be how-to tapes. Now there's some really good things that Tom and Ray have taught over the years that can really help out. But I don't think how-to is the idea here. I think watching the horse and watching the colt. And I'm talking to Tyson just a little bit here about supporting this colt underneath his neck when he gets on. And you can see when he got off there, both hands were free. Now, we don't want him to control this colt, but if he'll get his left hand up there on the neck, on the underneath side of the neck, as he starts to get on, he'll be able to just support that colt enough that he might not move forward. And you'll see him in a little bit here. He kind of puts that to work and is able to get back on. So a lot of times people see the kind of aggressive stuff that we do. They see the excitement, but they don't see the support. And the support is really, really helpful to these colts. So you want some of the excitement, as far as, you don't want to get it too quiet. but it all comes down to the support. It's not the other stuff that you can easily see. It's the support and the little things that you can't see or that you may miss that really make the big difference.
Here, Rachel, Alright, now I want y'all to know I was one behind the scenes here telling old Kevin what to do. A horse like this, now I rode him about 20 times already, but I had never rode him without no head style on. So I was wanting Kevin just show you, just how it might turn out. But,
That's hard to do, but you.
I don't know, you seem to be a natural at it. This is the second ride with this colt, and I believe it's the second day after, or the day after the film you just watched, but I'm not sure. I think we did all 5 rides in maybe 7 or 8 days. The one thing here is the colt kind of moves, and if you watch the things we do, or we've done the last day or so here with this colt, we don't say whoa, and we don't make this colt stop, and you watch him walking around and you might think that's rude, but I don't see it as being rude at all. I see him as moving to get comfortable, and as long as I can just kind of stay in there and stay with him, then I'm completely happy. And at the same time he's moving, we're kind of letting him bend around us, so we're working on the horse getting softer. But you can see he's tight. We haven't exercised him or anything here before we put the saddle on, and you can if you want, of course, which would make it a little bit easier if he gets just a little bit of exercise and some different things before you put the saddle on. And we're getting some help from this other horse, which I don't mind at all, but this other horse is ours, and he has a little problem once in a while because he was raised in a stall before we got him, and he likes to chew on things, and you'll see him take a bite out of my saddle, and I don't tap him here quite as hard as it looks, but he's a horse that kind of likes to move, and it's easy for him to move, so you're going to see him move away pretty quick. And I don't mind him nuzzling around on the colt or the saddle or anything, but I don't like him to get going with that habit more and more of actually taking a bite out of things, because it's hard on your equipment. Now you notice there I did kind of stop the colt a little bit there. Once you start to tighten your cinch up, you may have to be a little more aware of them moving, because that's when they might get to moving too much and get in trouble. Today we're gonna do pretty much the same thing we did yesterday at the start. We'll get the saddle on him, and then we'll turn him loose and let him go around and exercise with the saddle a little bit. And to do that, we'll just put a rider on another horse, and that makes it a lot easier than doing it on foot. But before you make that changeover, you may want him to move around just a little bit, and then if he has any kinks in his back or anything, you won't get in the middle of a wreck while he's doing that. But still, you want to kind of keep one eye on him and one eye on what you're doing. And we're going to take a little break here and cut the film while my daughter puts her bridle on. Now, you don't have to try to accomplish anything in the round pen if you don't want to. And you should be conscious of not trying to accomplish too much in the round pen. And one of the things is about these horses facing you. And you have to be careful the way this has went a little bit in people forcing horses to face them. And I don't believe that when I watched Ray hunt years ago that he ever forced a horse to face him. And you see Adrian stop, and that horse did almost come out and face her, but then he turned the other way and he turned into the rail, and that is not a big deal, and I don't believe that you should make too much of an issue out of that sometimes. And all she's really doing is just starting him off and letting him stop, which is what we talked about in the first ride, transitions. So she moves the horse and then she lets the horse slow down. And you see him want to come out there a little bit, and he didn't make it. And there he did. He was able to go the other direction without turning his hindquarters to her. And it's something that's nice to know, to kind of have a colt come out off of the fence to you and come to you, because you'd like to put your halter on their head and instead of their hindquarters. But you also need to keep in mind that you don't ride the horse from up in front of his head. You're riding from behind his head, so you want him to be comfortable there too. And that time he stopped and came out. And this colt hasn't been worked in the round pen ever to come around to you. But he's probably been roped once or twice when he was first caught. I didn't ask Justin, but so he kind of knows to come and face you, so that was the start of that. And then Adrian just kind of builds on that a little bit, but she doesn't force him to face her. Facing in the round pen can be very overrated and can even be destructive. And you'll see horses that just want to square up with the people all the time and face them. And like I said before, you don't ride the horse from in front of him. So we want our horses to be comfortable with their rear to us, with their side to us. And that's very nice the way he came out there. But the biggest thing going on here is just letting the colt get a little exercise before we get on him, just for the safety of the horse and the rider both. And sometimes, I'm not sure what she did there on purpose or not, but sometimes I'll turn the horse away from me a little bit just to let him know that he can turn away from me, and he'll sometimes get in a little bind there as he turns into the fence, and he might tell you some things about himself, whether he has a spot there that when he turns to go he gets scared, gets tight, or wants to buck. But the thing, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, is you may have an idea as you're working this horse of what you want to do with him, but you need to be very careful to watch for what he does, and then you want to let what he does change your idea. So even if you maybe wanted the colt to go to the left like he is now, if he made a decision in there and it worked out better for everything to happen, we'd let him go to the right, and then we'd maybe set that up the next time around and change what we were doing a little bit and have him go to the left. I think you get in a lot of trouble when you get an exact set in your mind that this is what you're going to do with a horse. And that was really nice of him to come out there and just kind of park it. And Adrian just rode away and let him just kind of stand there a little bit. Now she's done with kind of what she was doing there, and I guess she's telling me that he's safe for me to ride.
You want me to narrate this, Kevin?
If you want, we can take it out.
This is one of my students here I've been working with. He's like 52. He's always wanted to ride horses. So I got a horse here that his daughter had started and rode a year ago, but she only put like 75 days on him. And Kevin's going to see if he can ride him, maybe.
Now right there is a good reason to not have the owners around when you ride a horse. But actually that's not true. I always felt like I did a better job when the owners were there. And I like to have them there. Justin isn't your typical owner. They actually have a lodge, and if you contact me, he takes people out and they do ranch work and things like that on horses. And Justin also has a pretty good idea of what's going on with horses if you want to ride with him. And the reason that I'm actually starting this colt was I was on the East Coast, and this is being filmed in the Sandhills of Nebraska. And I was on the East Coast, and Justin had talked to me, and he'd hurt his back, and so this colt was going to go to, he wanted to sell him, so he was going to start him and put him on this sale. And I told him when I got back I'd ride him a while for the sale and then help him get him rode through the sale. Well, I rode him and kind of liked him and didn't have a lot of time to get him ready for the sale anyway, so I ended up buying the horse from Justin, and we're gonna ride him a while, and then I don't know what we're gonna do with him for sure, but he's a nice little horse. And you saw there that when I went to put the bridle on, and he hasn't had a bridle on before, and it didn't quite work out. So I went back to my halter and then just played with his nose a while, and then restarted to try to put the bridle on. And that goes back to what we talked about, because my intention was to put the bridle on the colt. I walk up to him, I put the bridle on. But he told me something different there. He said he wasn't ready. And that's fine, it didn't bother me. I just went back to a spot where I could get him ready for the bridle. And I'm going to be real careful here as I kind of lead him off. And you see him following, so he doesn't understand that bit at all. So if I pulled on him, he wouldn't understand that. So he's just following like he still has a halter on. And there's an adjustment here, just because he's been led for even years. And if he'd been led a lot, which he hasn't, if you take that horse and put a bridle on him, there's a changeover. Now this is a string, and I first saw Ray Hunt do this about 20 years ago. And you just tie a knot that won't slip in this string, and you tie it around your bit. Then you run the one of the sides, the bottom side, back through the mouth, and we'll tie that up to the brow band. And you can tie it to the forelock too. I believe Ray tied it to the forelock. I generally just tie it to the brow band. And what that does, and you don't need to put it on right away, but we put it on this colt so we don't have to stop later. But if you get a horse that starts to put his tongue over the bit, you can tie this on there, and all it does is kind of hold the bit up a little higher in their mouth, and up just enough that they can't put their tongue over it. Now he's got to get used to that a little bit, so we'll just start side to side just a little bit to see if he can kind of give into that bit. And give in might not be a real good word, but see if he can accept that and get used to it. And this bit's plenty big for him. And these are similar to what we did yesterday off the horse, which was just get a little bit of lateral movement and a little bit of bending in the horse. We like the feet to move if we can. And we wait on that. We just take a hold and wait. We don't try to have anything happen. We don't try to make something happen. Now he hasn't had much feel of the bit here, so he doesn't know much about it, and so I can't help him much. So when I start to get on and he starts to take off, we not only have him a little bit scared of me, we also have something in his mouth that he's never been used to, so he doesn't get much support from that. So I'd encourage you to spend a little more time, maybe even in 2 or 3 days, leading your colt with the bit, turning him until he gets used to that. And you can see here that that's tough for him. I mean, because I can't hardly help him at all with that bit because he's not used to it. And this is the part where I say that, you know, I'm not trying to show how to do this. I'm trying to show how the horse thinks. And if I'd have rode him the first time today with a halter, and I haven't ever been on the colt, so he's got to get used to me. He got really used to Tyson yesterday. And if I'd have started out with a halter here, it would have been easier on him because he would understand what the halter does. But if you spend 2 or 3 days leading your colt around with the bit and bending him and doing some things like that, he's going to be much more ready to accept the bit. But you see how he can, you know, he can have that trouble and he can come through that and still be fine. But that's one of the things that I've tried to show here, that you have to be aware of these things. You don't have to fix them, but you have to be aware of them, and you have to pick them up later if they become a problem. And as you notice, as the colt took off, I almost pulled back on him, and it looks like I pulled back on him a little more than I did. But I don't like to pull back on these colts if I can help it. I want to pull them to side. Now, I always tell people that it doesn't matter what I tell them. If they're in trouble and they need to save themselves, to do whatever it takes to save yourself. But I'd rather not pull back on 2 reins on these young horses. And he held in pretty good there and then kind of softened up at the end. Take my stirrups up, I believe, here, a notch on each side. And there's the support on the neck as we let him know we feel for him. And you want to get that slack out of that left rein when you get on a horse that you don't know, or a young horse. You don't necessarily have to pull on it or do anything with it, but you want that slack out of that rein, and you want a little bit of a feel in the mouth, and then they know where you are. It's very important that they know where you are, and that connection to their mouth lets them know where you are. And then, of course, for safety wise, if they do something, you're a little more ready. Same thing as yesterday. If he takes off a little, we just try to go with him. All we're concerned about here is just nice movement and the transitions from the walk to the trot, and we like those to be nice. And you can see that the horse and the rider in the middle are controlling what the young horse is doing. And there's your waiting. And then he got a little bit scared. Something behind him, or something I did, or something happened there, and he jumped forward. But it's very important to watch your transitions and try to get them as smooth as you can. Sometimes they're not going to be smooth, and that was his first time to canter with me, and you could see he got the wrong lead. We never ask for a particular lead, but generally if you're kind of working them around in here, you can get the correct lead most every time. And the last thing you'd want to do with his level of learning is stop him immediately for that wrong lead. There's the waiting. See the left rein tight, and then wait. And you don't do anything with your legs or anything. You take a hold of the rein there, and then you just wait. And see, Adrian's controlling this horse, so when she gets there, she's going to move him. So he's going to move, but the rider needs to wait. And you can see as soon as she backs off, the colt relaxes, and there's the take a hold. He bent, and the wait, and just direct him on through the turn, then release and go the other way. Now, Adrian's a little, there's the holding, and then just wait, and there it comes through. Adrian's a little nicer to me than my wife and I were to each other when we first learned this. We used to give each other some real rides. And part of that because we didn't understand it, and part of it because we were enjoying what we were doing. And it depends on the type of person you are. I've always thought in some ways I was a little bit more like Ray Hunt than I was Tom Dorrance, in that I like to kind of live close to the edge, especially when I was younger. So I'm sometimes, I can get a little too close to trouble, and there's waiting and then coming through, and you see the horse walk forward into the bit there, but you don't really do anything else. You just stay there and wait, and pretty soon he'll quit coming forward and he'll come around. And that's the same thing there. It's a little change here. He's fighting it because we're changing things a little bit. Before, we just let his front end come across. Now we're asking his hind end to release, and then his front end to come across. And you could see there that as she followed him around, that was frustrating to him. So he threw his head and fought the bit a little bit. That's just the front end across. But you want to try to get both ends loosened up to where you loosen up the hind end to step away. We'll see if that happens here. So I'm waiting for the horse to kind of give to the left rein. Then the hind end should step away here. There's the hind end away, and then the front end across. Now I didn't come across with the front end very quick that time, but that was the first time he's ever did that little maneuver to the left. To the right the time before, the first time to the right, he came across a little quicker. But we want to let the hind end release, we wait on it, and then Adrian's going to drive the front end across. Or I thought she was going to, but I guess we're changing directions here. But I wait for her to help me change directions. I got plenty of time left to do the changing of directions all on my own on this horse. Right now I just don't want him to get upset with me if I can help it. Same thing, we're waiting on the hind end, there's the front end across. And you see that he always comes out into that loose rein if we can. So we take a hold of one rein and we wait. And then he comes into a loose rein and we go right back to a loose rein where we're not controlling and holding the colt back. And there's the loose rein again, and we let him walk off pretty much in any direction he wants to go. Because Adrian will send him one way or another, so I don't worry about which direction he goes. I worry about him giving to the bit, to the inside. I worry about the hind quarter stepping over, and I worry about the front end coming across. Everything else is pretty much up to him and the other person in the ring. There, that's a little nicer for him. Now she's gonna, there. That time she hurried him across, because the other time that we tried it, he was a little slow and a little sticking. There's the hind end, and then she's gonna let him go the other direction. Now if he follows her, that's okay for a little bit, and then we'll just set it up in another way. And Adrian doesn't get involved, and you can see her waiting too. She kind of is creating a little bit of a disturbance, but she's waiting. Now we were ready to go. I was ready to go a long time ago, but you can see the colt's not ready to go. Then he got ready to go, and he came through nice and smooth. His head's down on the other side. He's chewing the bit, and the reins are loose. And I don't know if you can get that if you don't understand the waiting part. Now once again, all this would have been avoided if we'd have spent just a little bit of time leading him and on the ground. Maybe 10 or 15 minutes today, or maybe 2 or 3 days, and we wouldn't have this little bit of fighting in his mouth. Once again, you gather up your reins no matter how good he's being when you get off, even if you don't use them, like I didn't really use them right there, but I still gathered my reins before I got off. And we're gonna take this colt out to the pasture and ride him out in the meadow here. And that's Justin there loading him for me. You can see he gets out of the trailer, his back's not feeling too good. Now the colt went right in, and he's gonna, once again, he hasn't been used to having a bit on, and we're gonna get him a little bit of help here because we don't want to pull on him enough there to get him out of the trailer that we have problems. We thought we'd just load him in and out a couple times before we go out to the pasture, and you can see we got him in, and we're trying to get him out in a way that doesn't get him too upset. We want it to be a good experience for him. He's been in and out of trailer a couple times when he was hauled just to turn out the pasture, but I don't think he was ever led in and out of a trailer. It was just run loose in and run loose out. But Adrian's going to come over here beside him and just kind of help him out a little bit. And there was a little try, and then we start over with that try. And you notice Justin doesn't pull hard enough that this horse hits his head on the trailer. He just kind of helps direct and keep him lined up. And then Adrian's creating something back there. And you can do this same kind of thing with loading a horse, as long as you have the person in the front directing and the person in the back helping. The picture in the river you see is the North Loop River. My dad actually owns this property here. And we'll see if we get him out without help. And that time he came out without help. What we're going to do is just go on just a little bit of ride down through the bottom and into the meadow. And he was pretty good about that. And we're going to use another horse, and he can either follow the other horse or we can drive him with the other horse. And that's one of the things that I really think is important, and I know I've said it before, but is about your idea. And as Adrian starts off here, if he follows her and goes with her, that's good. But if he won't move, she can come behind him and have him move. But if you set off to do something with a colt and you have one way that you think you're going to do it, or you've been told to do it, and that doesn't work out quite so well, then you're probably going to head for trouble, because you can't adjust to fit the situation. And you can see he took off there a little bit, and I don't want him to get too carried away, so I let him get out there a ways, and then I took a hold of my left rein, and I held and waited until he made a turn, and then we're back on track again. But I didn't pull straight back on him, and I didn't try to completely stop that or put that into the ground. I just took a hold of him and let him come to the left. Then he kind of came to a stop, and then I waited on him to complete his turn. Now that's similar to what we did in the round pen. And in the round pen, might not have made too much sense. But then when we got out here and I needed that, to me that made a lot of sense, because I'd already practiced making that little turn in the round pen, and Adrian had been there with a kind of a scary flag. Then when I get out in a situation like this and my colt kind of takes off, we have some prior experience, and that can help us get through that. We have something to fall back on, because he's like, oh, I've done this before. He's like, Kevin pulls on the left rein, I bend, I wait, and then I go off in a different direction. One of the other reasons we did this way is to show that the order, you don't necessarily have to have it in this order or that order. And so the first day we rode him without anything on his head, and the second day we put a bridle on. Now we could have just as well rode the first day with a halter or even a bridle if we'd spent some time with it, and rode the second day in a different way. And we could have started him then the first day in a round pen and took him out into the big pen the second day. But what I kind of want you to see here is just the ability of the horse to learn. And Tom Dorrance used to talk to me about the fact that the horse fills in for the rider. So if you can, he was talking about, making changes in horses that have a little bit of problem with your rider, with their rider. And if you can change that horse just a little bit, Tom would say that his term was that that horse will fill in for the rider. Now you watch the broke horse here, or kind of broke, as he starts to think about bucking just a little bit. And you watch my horse, what he does when he sees the excitement. He just takes off the other way, and I don't have to pull back on him. And when he kind of slows down, I wait for him to bend, and I wait for him to come to the right. Once again, that waiting is so important. But see, my horse had been in that situation in the round pen and the arena the other two rides. So when he saw something happen, and my horse, and the other horse get pretty excited and do something, things didn't go to pieces, because he'd already seen that before. He's like, that's no big deal. But he did have to get out of there a ways, and I don't blame him for that. And I didn't try to keep him close to that other horse, because he saw some problems, and he decided he needed to get out of there. And he got out of there, and as soon as he felt like he is a safe distance out of that problem, then he quieted right down. And then I waited for him to go back to the other horse. Now, as I said before, this is the Sand Hills, and I think this was in end of September or October when we shot this film. And Adrian kind of waited for me to catch up there, so she took care of me to try not to get too big a distance between the two horses. And that's actually my dad down there fishing. He didn't know I was coming up there, and I didn't know he would be up there. So he's fishing for bass there in the pond. But you can see here, I think, the support this little colt's getting off of that other horse. And even though that other horse does some things that the other horse maybe shouldn't quite do, this little colt's getting a lot of support out of that. Adrian felt like she needed to stop her horse there because he wasn't quite right for what she wanted, and she did. But at the same time, she knew that the situation was good and that she could correct her horse. Now, right when we first took off the hill, she'd have probably let her horse get away with quite a few things because we were out in a new situation with that colt. But once he's been out there and moved around and stuff, she can do those things and feel pretty sure that he'll be fine. And he's wanting to go on his own there, and he kind of goes away a little bit and gets out on his own. I let him and then direct him just enough to get him back on the path there. And you see him come back to the walk. We talked about that the first day, the transitions. He's real comfortable with that there. And we'll see if we can turn him, and then we'll get off. So once again, we don't pull on both reins if we can help it. We turn him enough till he stops, and then we get off. Okay.